Sarah's hands were trembling, but this time it wasn't on a battlefield. It was the moment she heard 3 children trapped in a basement. Sarah Martinez woke up at 6:30 a.m. that morning without an alarm. Her old military habits had never left her. This experienced 34-year-old nurse had dreamed of Hurricane Ida battering the Louisiana coast the night before. But the real storm was just beginning. After serving 3 tours in Iraq, Sarah now worked at Memorial Hospital in New Orleans. Every morning she followed the same routine: shower, coffee, check the news, go to work. But today was different. The damage from the hurricane was much worse than expected. When her phone rang at 7:15 a.m., head nurse Jennifer's voice was worried. "Sarah, you need to come in urgently. More than half the staff can't make it. The roads are closed. You're our most experienced trauma nurse." Without hesitation, Sarah said, "I'm coming." What her military background had taught her was simple. When duty calls, you run toward it. She left her coffee half finished and headed to her car. Outside was worse than expected. Trees were down, power lines were broken, everything was flooded. But Sarah had seen worse. In Iraq, at that hospital in Fallujah, that night everything was on fire, and she had to evacuate 12 wounded soldiers alone. 6 hours after Hurricane Ida hit Louisiana, Sarah Martinez was heading to the hospital for her shift change. This former Army nurse still carried the scars of what she'd witnessed on battlefields. Disaster reports were coming over the radio. At least 15 dead, hundreds of homes damaged, thousands homeless. But she had no idea this night would completely change her life. This is when everything changed. While trying to drive through flooded roads, her GPS kept saying, "Recalculating route." When she entered Oakwood Avenue, the water level had risen even higher. The car's tires were slipping in the water. Just as she was thinking of turning back, she heard screaming from a side street. Under normal circumstances, she might not have heard it, but with the sharp instincts her military training had given her, she immediately noticed. "Help! Children are trapped in the basement." The voice was desperate, hopeless. It sounded familiar to Sarah, just like those voices she heard after bombings in Iraq. Sarah pulled over and turned off the engine. In the silence, the voice was clearer. An elderly woman was running around the yard. Sarah remembered the first rule of her military training. In panic situations, the calmest person takes command. Sarah's heart raced. That night in Iraq came back to her, hearing children's voices in the rubble after a bombing. That hot June night in 2018. The base hospital had been bombed and there were wounded children in the basement. The little child she couldn't save that day. Amira. She was 7 years old. She had dark brown eyes and kept calling her sister's name. Sarah was trying to rescue her when the second bomb exploded. But the truly shocking thing was, Sarah got out of the car and ran toward the elderly woman. Water had risen to ankle level and was rising fast. When she reached the house, the scene she saw shocked her. The water level was rising rapidly and the elderly homeowner was screaming helplessly in the yard. "My grandchildren are trapped in the basement. Water got in, the door won't open." The woman's voice was hoarse, trembling with fear. Sarah approached her and grabbed her shoulders. "Stay calm. I'm Nurse Sarah. We'll save them. Tell me their names and ages." The woman began speaking through tears. "Emma is 9. Jake is 7. Little Mia is only 5. They went down to the basement to play. When the hurricane started, I locked the door for safety. Now water got in and the door won't open." Sarah's military training kicked in. She quickly analyzed the situation and ran the battle assessment protocol in her mind. Water level rising 15 centimeters per minute. Basement door stuck due to water pressure. 3 children. Emma, 9. Jake, 7. Mia, 5. House structure, 1950s, low basement ceiling. Weather, hurricane continuing. Rain intensified. Fire department distance, at least 40 minutes. Roads closed. Maximum 20 minutes available. Sarah looked at her watch. 8:47. If her calculations were correct, the basement would be completely flooded by 9:07. "You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet?" Sarah ran to her car and opened the trunk. As a habit from her military past, she always kept an emergency bag in her car. What came out of the bag surprised the elderly woman. Medical supplies, emergency rope, flashlight, even a small oxygen tank. But the real surprise was what she found at the bottom of her bag, a small tactical breaching tool she'd forgotten from Iraq that she used for car repairs. She had learned to use it as a door-breaking tool during military training. "My God," said the elderly woman, "were you really a soldier?" Sarah looked at her with a strong expression. "I was a field medic in Iraq. I know how to save wounded in war zones, and no one will die today." "Stand back," Sarah shouted. To the elderly woman, "I'll save them. I promise you." But at that moment she faced a terrible reality. When she tried to break the door, she realized how powerful the water pressure was. She would need to use everything she had learned in her military training. First, she examined around the door. It was a metal door, and the powerful water pressure was keeping it completely locked. But Sarah had a plan. The lateral entry technique she learned in Iraq. If you can't get through the main entrance, you find an alternative route. Wait, don't miss this detail. When she looked through the basement window, what she saw froze her. The children were standing on the top steps of the stairs. Water had risen to their chest level. Little Mia was crying. 7-year-old Jake was hugging his sister Emma, while 9-year-old Emma was trying to calm the other two. Sarah brought her face close to the window and started calling out. The fear she saw in the children's eyes took her straight back to Iraq. Just like that night, in the hospital basement where bombs were exploding, the same fear in wounded children's eyes. But this time would be different. Emma looked at Sarah with hope when she saw her. "Please help. The water's rising so fast." Sarah's voice was strong and calm. "Hello, children. I'm Nurse Sarah. I came to save you." "Emma, I can see you're a very brave girl. It's wonderful how you're taking care of Jake and Mia," Jake asked in a trembling voice. "But the water is so high. How will we get out?" Sarah immediately sprang into action. Every second of her military training would now come in handy. First, she tried to force the door, but it was useless. The water pressure was too much. Even when forcing it with the breaching tool, the door wouldn't budge. "Alternative plan activated," Sarah muttered. She hadn't even noticed her military jargon. "Now you haven't seen anything yet." Sarah took a deep breath and made a decision. Just like she did in Iraq, she had to find an alternative entrance. There was a small ventilation window on the side wall of the house. The window was approximately 60 by 45 centimeters, narrow but passable. Sarah was acting with the composure her military background gave her. She removed the window frame with the breaching tool. The metal creaked, but finally loosened. "Hey kids," she called through the window. "I'm Nurse Sarah. I came to save you. Trust me, okay?" The oldest child, 9-year-old Emma, replied anxiously, "But the window is too small. How will we get out?" Sarah smiled. Just as she spoke to wounded soldiers in Iraq, she spoke in a calm tone. "Let me tell you a secret, Emma. I used to be a soldier. I know how to make the impossible possible. But first I need to teach you something." Sarah began teaching the children the breathing technique she knew from military training. "Now all of you take a deep breath. Count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now hold it. 2, 3, 4. Release slowly. 2, 3, 4. This was a method she used to calm wounded soldiers in Iraq. She needed to lower the children's heart rate so they wouldn't panic during the rescue. "You're doing great," said Sarah. "Now listen to me. I'm going to explain a rescue plan to you. You won't believe this." Sarah had a detailed plan in mind. She could set up a rescue system with the tactical rope in her military bag. Rope rescue technique, the system they used to lower wounded soldiers from aircraft in Iraq. But the problem was, she had to get the children out one by one, and the water level was rising every second. Sarah looked at her watch. 8:52. She only had 15 minutes left. "Emma, I'm appointing you as leader," Sarah said in a military tone. "You're the big sister and the oldest. You're responsible for Jake and Mia's safety, understood?" Emma's posture changed. The sense of responsibility had strengthened her. "Understood, Nurse Sarah." "Excellent. Now I'm explaining the plan. We'll start with the youngest. Mia, you'll come out first. Then Jake, then Emma last. Emma, you come out last because you're the strongest and will help the others." The rescue operation for Mia began first. Sarah passed the military rope around Mia's waist and made a safety knot. The little girl was scared, but Sarah's calm voice reassured her. Mia, now I'm going to give you a very important mission. Grandma is waiting for you out there. You're a very brave girl, and she needs to see you, okay? Mia nodded. Sarah began slowly pulling her up. When she safely got little Mia out, the elderly woman hugged her granddaughter in tears. "We saved one!" shouted the elderly woman. "Thank God!" But Sarah knew the real difficulty was just beginning. The water level had risen to Jake's chest. The second child, 7-year-old Jake, was a much more difficult case. He was frozen with fear, and the water level was bothering him. Sarah recognized the fear in his eyes, just like those traumatized children she saw in Iraq. Sarah repeated the same words she used to say to wounded soldiers in Iraq. "Jake, I'm going to give you a very important mission. You're a very brave boy. You need to help your sister Emma. I need you, okay?" "But I'm scared," Jake whispered. "Jake, being scared is normal. You know, I was very scared sometimes in Iraq. But courage isn't not being afraid. It's doing the right thing despite being afraid. You're a brave soldier now." Sarah taught Jake military hand signals. "Now, when I give you the signal, hold your breath and stay still. Act like a soldier, okay?" Jake nodded. The military game idea had relaxed him. Sarah also got him out safely. But now the most critical situation was coming. She was alone with Emma, and the water level had risen to Emma's neck. It was 8:58, only 9 minutes left. And then something happened. Jake found courage and managed to get out the window with Sarah's guidance. But now came the hardest part. Emma. The water level had now risen to Emma's neck, and the young girl was starting to panic. "Emma, look at me," Sarah said in a strong tone. "I'm sorry I left you last, but there's a reason for that. You're the oldest and strongest. Most importantly, you're a leader. And leaders come out last." Emma's voice was trembling. "But I'm scared. The water is so high." Sarah's eyes filled up. This voice, this fear. Just like what that little girl Amira said in Iraq. She too had said "I'm scared" as her last words. Sarah could never forget that moment. "Emma, let me tell you a story," Sarah said. "Far away there was a girl your age named Amira. She was very scared too. I tried to help her, but I couldn't save her that time. But today I will save you. Because you're very strong and you trust me." Emma calmed down a bit. "But how?" "Now I'll teach you a military technique. It's called tactical breathing. Ready, Soldier Emma?" Emma smiled slightly. "Ready, Commander Sarah." When you thought it was over. As Sarah was attaching the rope to Emma, the worst thing happened. Just as she started pulling Emma up, the old rope broke. Sarah's heart almost stopped. Emma lost her balance and fell into the water. The current began pulling her away from the window. "Emma!" Sarah screamed. This couldn't be a repeat of the nightmare in Iraq. It couldn't happen. Sarah didn't hesitate. Just like she did in Iraq, she immediately jumped into the water. Using all the secrets of her military training, she reached Emma. But now both of them were trapped in the water. The basement was completely flooded. The water was ice cold and Sarah's lungs were burning. Emma was in panic and had grabbed onto Sarah. Both were going underwater. "Emma!" Sarah shouted in the water. "Listen to me. We can do this." The water level was only 30 centimeters from the ceiling. As Sarah held Emma tightly, she was calculating the way out. Air pocket. She had learned in military training. There are always small air pockets left in structures underwater. Sarah was holding Emma in her arms while searching for an escape route. The water level had reached the ceiling. Oxygen was running out and both their lungs were burning. Emma's lips were turning blue. At that critical moment, the most important lesson from Sarah's military past came to mind. The underwater survival protocol that Captain Rodriguez taught in Iraq. Don't panic underwater. Move along the wall. Look for air pockets. Never give up. "Emma," Sarah said breathlessly, almost drowning in the water, "I'm going to tell you something very important. You're a very strong girl. Now take a deep breath and we'll swim together." Sarah swam toward the ceiling with Emma and found an air pocket. Only a 10-centimeter area, but enough to breathe. "Breathe!" Sarah shouted. "Take a deep breath." After Emma took a breath, Sarah explained the plan. "Now we'll swim underwater toward the window. Hold me tight, but don't panic. I'll take you." Sarah swam underwater toward the window with Emma. Her lungs were burning, but she didn't give up. For that child, Amira, she couldn't save in Iraq. This time would be different. This time, she would succeed. With the strength her military training gave her, she pushed Emma out the window first. The elderly woman and other children caught Emma. Sarah threw herself out at the last moment. When they got out of the window, fire crews had arrived and surrounded the area. It was 9:03. Sarah was right in her calculations. The basement was completely flooded. As Sarah and Emma sat breathless on the grass, the elderly woman hugged all 3 grandchildren. While paramedics checked Emma, Sarah sat quietly, watching her hands tremble. Fire Officer Mike O'Connor approached Sarah. "Ma'am, can you tell us who you are?" "How did you save these children?" Sarah replied with a tired but proud expression. "I'm Sarah Martinez. I'm a nurse at Memorial Hospital, just a nurse doing her job." But Emma immediately jumped in. "No, she's a hero. She's a former soldier and she saved us. The water was so high, we were all going to die, but she came." Mike O'Connor looked surprised. "A veteran?" "3 tours in Iraq," Sarah said humbly. "I was a field medic." Mike blinked. "Ma'am, I'm also an Afghanistan veteran." "What you did. This is next level. You're a hero today." After that night, Sarah's life changed fundamentally. She was freed from the guilt she had carried for years. The memory of Amira, whom she couldn't save in Iraq, now strengthened her. Emma, Jake, and Mia regularly visited Sarah at the hospital. Emma said, "When I grow up, I'll be a nurse like you too." Jake constantly called her Commander Sarah, and Mia hugged her saying, "My hero." 6 months later, Sarah's speech while receiving the local heroism award. "I'm a veteran. I lost many lives on the battlefield. I blamed myself for a long time. But that night, I learned that our past mistakes can make us stronger. Every new day is a new chance to save someone. The life I couldn't live for Amira, I now live for Emma, Jake, and Mia." As Emma stood up applauding at the award ceremony, everyone in the hall was in tears. The traumas we experience in war don't have to destroy us. We can use them to help others. I still have PTSD, but now I turn them into my strength. Sarah now works both as a nurse at the hospital and as leader of the disaster rescue team. She collaborates with FEMA and mentors veterans. Every life is precious. Never give up. And sometimes our greatest pains from the past become the source of our greatest strengths in the future. And Sarah? Sarah now sees Amira when she looks in the mirror every morning, not as the child who couldn't be saved, but as an angel who gives her strength. Because thanks to Amira's memory, Emma, Jake, and Mia are alive.